Mustafa Barghouti is a long-time Palestinian politician, former peace negotiator and member of the Palestinian Parliament, and he's joining me now. Welcome to the program. It's not often that we get to talk face-to-face, but this is an important, I think, juncture and turning point. Do you agree? Do you agree with in fact, what Netanyahu has said, what Trump appears to be saying, that this action in Iran could pave the way for a resolution, at least of ceasefire in Gaza?
It can, definitely, if the American president has the will to do so. And he has the ability to use the leverage he has over Netanyahu. It is very clear. But also, most importantly, the last fight with Iran has shown two things. First of all, that Israel, without the United States, is incapable of attacking anybody. And
but that's not true, because Israel is the one who essentially, with its forces, obliterated Iran's air defenses and got control of the skies.
But they needed the United States to defend themselves against Iranian rockets.
Well, to do the big bunker busters.
Yeah, in other words, Israel is very dependent on the United States. But also, and that's very important, this whole conflict with Iran, and before that with Iraq, and before that with Syria and with Egypt, it all relates to one particular core reason, which is the issue of Palestine, and the fact that Israel continues to occupy the Palestinian land. So the only way to real peace and to a lasting peace and security for everybody is to solve the Palestinian issue and allow Palestinians to be free and independent. If the American president has the will, he can immediately impose pressure on Netanyahu to stop the war in Gaza, a horrible war that is taking so many lives.
Do you have any, sources and people who obviously you're connected with on this very personal and political issue for yourself in the region, who are giving you any hope that there might be some breakthrough? I mean, if President Trump says, quote, very close to a deal, and Hamas says, yes, but there are other issues, do you think it's possible?
The deal is quite possible, and actually not only about releasing all the 10 Israeli prisoners or captives, but actually the release of all Israeli captives in exchange of stopping the war. And I think Hamas has been ready for that for a long time. The question is, can the United States force Netanyahu to give up his original plan, which is to keep pushing Palestinians out of every place in Gaza into what could become a concentration camp near Rafah, and to give up his plan of total ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in Gaza? That's the game. Now, we've heard today, most recently, new information or news that Trump is promising Netanyahu that if he stops the war in Gaza, that Trump will eliminate all the corruption cases against Netanyahu.
Well, obviously it's not in Trump's purview to be able to do that.
Right, but it could be something that he could convince the Israeli president to give pardon with.
So we've talked a little bit about the dynamic potentially having changed over these strikes on Iran, a bit of a window for engagement. What do you think? I mean, the big all-time question, obviously, for Palestinians is, does Israel leave the Gaza Strip? Does the IDF get out, which was what the Biden administration had thought it was negotiating at the end of its time there? Does an international force, but maybe mostly Arab force, come in, and guaranteed by the United States? And does Hamas lay down its weapons and agree that it is not going to be any member of an official future for Gaza?
That issue was resolved long time ago.
Which issue?
The issue that Hamas would leave the government. They have told us that many times in our meetings with them, when we had a meeting of all Palestinian forces, first in Moscow and then in Beijing. And the Beijing declaration, which I personally drafted, speaks about the formation of a technocratic government that is independent from parties, but which would be accepted by all Palestinians, a national consensus government, which would be a temporary government to start the reconstruction of Gaza and then prepare the ground for free democratic elections, which Palestinians deserve and that we didn't have for 20 years now. I think the Palestinian people
That's because of a lot to do with the leader of the Palestinians, Mahmoud Abbas.
Sure.
Yeah.
Of course, he has to accept that, and it is up to him now to start implementing the Beijing Declaration, which means we don't need any other forces to come in. We are fully capable of ruling ourselves.
You know that's not going to fly, Mr. Barghouti. There's no way that either the Americans or the Israelis are going to say, oh yeah, here, go for it, after what happened. There's going to have to be some kind of international acceptable force to temporarily or whatever it is to guarantee the peace.
They're most welcome to bring any international force to sit on the borders, but not to rule us.
I know.
Why should we?
Ruling, yeah.
No. We have been under Israeli occupation for more than 57 years. We've been deprived of the right to be free and to be free from occupation. I don't think we as Palestinian people need another occupation by anybody. What we need is to have the right chance, like everybody else in this world, to rule ourselves, but also to have a democratic process, something that has been ignored for a long time. Even when some Western countries talk about reform, they never say that it should be democratic reform, and Palestinians should have the right to democratically elect their leaders. The system we are using now, Kristyan, is a system of proportional election, which means the percentage you get will give you the same number of seats equal to the proportion you got. Mm-hmm. So no single party in Palestine can get absolute majority. That will create a pluralistic democratic system, different from anything before.
So I've heard quite a few different voices from Hamas. I've been on, certain calls where certain Hamas officials who claim to be just, politicians rather than militants say, this, that, and the other, but no troops anywhere near us. It has to be just Palestinians. And then I've had another voice, also from the past, really, who's in Gaza and has been under all the bombardments that we all know have happened there since October 7th, and said, Hamas, and this is weeks ago, should release all the hostages, be done with it, because we are suffering too much and they're causing us to suffer too much. So I'm talking about a Hamas saying about Hamas. So, as far as you know, and I know you're not Hamas and you don't speak for them, do you think there's still an internal struggle?
I don't think it's an internal struggle. Of course, there are different voices and different opinions. That's normal in any organization that has a little bit of democracy. Of course, there will be different views. But what we see here is the big question about the needs of the Palestinian people. Mm-hmm. If all the Israeli captives are released without declaring complete and total ceasefire, what you will see is that the Israeli army will invade all of Gaza Strip, push everybody into that very small area of Mawasi in what could become a concentration camp, and then Netanyahu fulfilling his plan of total ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. That's the risk we face today.